So we'll go now to Cindy and Richard Simon's garden in Castro Valley. And inspired by the Bringing Back the Natives garden tour, Cindy and Richard wanted to reduce water use, eliminate chemical use, and provide habitat for wildlife. At that time, their garden contained large, thirsty lawns bordered by juniper and box hedges. Through the tour, they found 4 Dimensions Landscape Company, which designed and installed their front and back gardens in 2009. And these people who can grow lupins, I really am envious. I want to be able to do that. Let us go now and meet with Cindy Simons in Castro Valley. So hi, Cindy. Do you need to unmute yourself?
I think so.
I need to stop sharing. That's me.
Okay.
Okay. And now let's see if we can bring you up.
Start video.
Shall we go ahead?
Okay.
Okay. So let's see. Can you tell us something before we start your video about how your water use has changed since you converted from lawns to native plant gardens?
You know, unfortunately, I did not really track my water bills back in 2009 when I started. I am guessing at least 50%, and I think probably a lot more than that because we had vast lawn areas and my HOA insisted that it be green even in drought year summers. So we reduced the lawn area completely. We actually now have a native meadow area, but no lawn. And it's at least 50%, probably 75% less than what we used to use.
I think that if you called East Bay Mud, you might be able to get them to get your water history for you if you ever wanted to find out.
I should, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead now and see your front garden. Then we're going to stop and have questions on the front garden, and then we'll go and see a second video on the back garden.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Simmons. Welcome to my California garden in Castro Valley. It's winter, mid-February, but a few plants have already started to bloom. When we moved into this house, it had a traditional suburban yard, a large lawn area with hedges and plants at the border. Here's the front yard, and in a minute the backyard, soon after we moved in. My homeowners association insisted that our lawns be green even in drought year summers. I worried about a grass lawn's need for lots of water and fertilizer, water we desperately need to conserve in California, and fertilizer that was washing into streams and the bay. Here's what my new garden looked like after 4 Dimensions Landscape Company designed and installed a beautiful, mostly California native garden in the spring of 2009. It has been amazing watching it mature over the last 12 years. I appreciate the huge water reduction. I only use fertilizer in my vegetable beds now. I like knowing that I am providing a habitat for native insects and animals. Butterflies, bees, and birds seem to love my garden. But over the years, one of the things I came to appreciate most was a sense of place. The standard issue American suburban garden can be beautiful, but it could be anywhere. I love having a garden that reflects where I live, showcasing plants that have evolved in California over millennia. My sister's native garden in Oregon looks different than mine, as would a native garden in New York or Florida. I think it's wonderful when I look at my garden and see many of the same plants that I see when I walk trails in the East Bay Hills. This is a California garden. So let's take a look at some of those beautiful plants in my now 12-year-old native garden. Even in winter, varying textures, shades of green, and plant height provide interest. Here's a good example along the front sidewalk. A small manzanita, Arctostaphylus emerald carpet, lines the walk. A taller variety, Arctostaphylus Pacific mist, and a sage, Salvia allen Chickering, add a layer about 3 feet in height behind the emerald carpet. Behind that, a 5-foot ceanothus provides yet another layer. Here's a closer look at the emerald carpet manzanita. It has the twisty, smooth red branches of most manzanitas, but the branches are mostly covered with a mound of dense leaves. It only gets about a foot high, with small pink-white blossoms appearing in winter. This deergrass, Mollembergia regens, provides a golden brown accent amongst the 3 layers of green. You'll see them throughout my garden. Here's a closer look at the Pacific mist manzanita, a medium shrub that gets about 2 to 3 feet tall. This one is a good 3 feet, but shorter in other places in my garden. I think this entire mass is one manzanita plant, about 7 feet in width. Beautiful blue-green leaves, new growth is lighter green, and white flowers tinged with pink. To the left of the Pacific mist manzanita is a Salvia Allen Chickering, one of several different sages in this garden. This one gets about 3 or 4 feet high and wide, with that lovely sage smell and beautiful lavender flowers in the spring. I'll show you a photo of some of those flowers when we have the backyard video. Cutting over to the strip between the walk and the driveway, here is more beautiful Manzanita Pacific mist. In the tan bark are 2 penstemon blue springs, which will produce 1 to 2 foot high stalks covered in flowers with shimmering hues of blue, purple, and pink. Bees and hummingbirds love them. Just starting their spring growth under the tan bark are some yarrow with a few peeping above. Achillea milfolium rosea. It will get about a foot or 2 high with flowers in varying shades of pink. Here's a photo from a few years ago in May of the yarrow and penstemon in bloom. This tree is a western redbud, Cercis occidentalis, which was planted 2 years ago. Beautiful pink flower blossoms appear in the spring, soon followed by round, heart-shaped apple-green leaves. Leaves darken to blue-green as they age, then turn yellow before they drop in the fall. Here's a photo of it in May last year. On the other side of the driveway is one of the loveliest of California native lilacs, Ceanothus dark star, growing to about 6 feet tall and 8 feet wide. It blooms in winter, budding out a few weeks ago and starting to burst out now with beautiful dark cobalt blue blossoms. Underneath the ceanothus, here are some beach strawberry, Fragaria chiloensis, a spreading low perennial with white blossoms in spring and summer. I have them throughout my garden. Cutting back over to the other side again, this is the area behind the manzanitas that we saw along the front walk. This area is divided by a decomposed granite path. Lining the edge is Heterotheca sessiliflora, San Bruno mountain, a low mounding aster that produces abundant golden yellow flowers. Here's a close-up of that aster and a photo of it in bloom. Behind the aster is another variety of Ceanothus, this one very different from the dark star. Ceanothus gloriosus, heart's desire, is only about a foot high. The light blue flowers appear in spring. Here's a third variety of Ceanothus in my garden. We saw this shrub rising behind the manzanitas along the front walk. Here's a closer view. Ceanothus Emily Brown is only supposed to get about 4 feet tall, but this one is at least 5 feet high and spreads even wider. It has glossy dark green leaves with lavender blue flowers in early spring. Further up the path, this silver bush lupin, Lupinus albifrons, produces spectacular tall purple blossoms. Here's a photo of it last year in May. Further along the path are some more Pacific mist manzanita and some deergrass. On the other side of the path, here are some sticky monkey flower plants, Mimulus orientacus. It produces beautiful yellow gold flowers in the summer. Here's a photo of it in June of last year, when you can also see the silver bush lupin in bloom behind there. Next to the sticky monkey flowers, there are some coyote mints, Monardella villosa, with a nice minty smell, gray-green leaves, and light purple flowers in the late spring and summer that attract butterflies. More deergrass, sticky monkey flower, and manzanitas fill in this area along the front of the house. Under the front windows of my house is yet another variety of manzanita, this one Arctostaphylos green sphere, beautiful pink blossoms that are coming out now. That's the end of my front yard video. It's time for a break for questions and answers. After the Q&A, we'll see the video of my backyard.
Thank you, Cindy. That was terrific. Your yard's beautiful.
Thank you, Kathy.
It has really filled in since I saw it such a long time ago. I saw it shortly after you had it installed.
It really did. It filled in pretty quickly, actually, but in 12 years, almost 12 years, it's really gotten much, much larger.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do for watering?
I have been watering probably twice a month in the summer, but after watching Al Kite, hearing him say that he didn't water his garden at all unless he had new plants, I'm thinking of trying that this summer because I think a lot of my plants would be just fine without water all summer long. Maybe just a few that look better if you water them once or twice a month.
Mm-hmm. And how about maintenance?
I have a very large yard, so I do have a gardener help, and I find that things do look better if I prune occasionally. And I've had some invasive species that have required some ongoing work, like I had some vinca that I've been pulling out for quite a while, and so there's some ongoing maintenance, but I don't think it's as much as a other non-native garden would be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I know we talked a little bit about Doug Talmy, and why don't you tell us how hearing Doug's talk made you think about your own garden?
Oh my gosh, it was such an inspiring talk, and I got so excited. I mean, I always felt so good about less water and less fertilizer and supporting native habitat. But when he started talking about an oak tree supports, I actually looked it up on Cowscape this morning, 143 different species, and I have 3 coastline books in my garden. I felt so happy about that. It was just wonderful. And now I'm thinking about what can I plant that are high up on that butterfly list. And I'm just really excited about that part of it more than I think I was before. So it was very inspiring that we can do our little piece to, keep native plants and native birds and bees and butterflies that are so important alive.
Yeah, his talk really made me think differently about my garden, about not just having a native plant garden, but wanting to have a garden for me that is the most productive native plant garden it could be for wildlife. So
yeah, that word productive was, really, it just struck a bell with me.
yeah. Well, why don't we go now and look at your next video, and then we'll take the rest of the time for questions.
Okay.
Okay, Jessica, thank you.
Welcome to the backyard of Cindy and Rick Simmons' garden in Castro Valley. The front yard video you've just seen was shot in winter, mid-February. Now it's mid-April with spring flowers blooming. The backyard was designed by 4 Dimensions Landscape to take advantage of the view to the East Bay Hills and Mount Diablo. What used to be a vast lawn now is low-growing shrubs along the back fence, trees and taller shrubs along the side fences, and a California native grass meadow. The meadow is seashore bent grass, Agrostis pallens, a perennial grass that requires about half the water of a traditional lawn. The backyard has many of the same plants as the front yard, bringing continuity to the overall design. So we'll focus mostly on plants that were not in the front garden video in this video. This deck planter has a couple of penstemons and some annual seedlings just coming up. There are California Poppy, Baby Blue Eyes, and Baby 5-Spot, and here's a photo of it a couple of years ago. At the corner of this path is a California fuchsia, Epilobium, also known as Zauschneria, Canum catalina. I love this plant for a couple of reasons. It blooms in the fall when most everything else is dormant. It's wonderful to have the bright orangey red fuchsia flowers beginning in late September. Here's a photo of it in bloom. Here are some tall shrubs that are Manzanitas, Arctostaphylos Howard McMinn. It's a 4th variety, different than the ones I have in the front. It gets much taller, about 5 feet. The pink-tinged white flowers are like the other Manzanita flowers, but bloom more profusely. And look at this beautiful, smooth, deep maroon bark on the gracefully twisting branches. I've pruned these back to show them off a bit. On the other side of the path are coffee berries. They're not actually related to coffee plants, but get a reddish-brown berry that looks a bit like coffee. You can see the berries above the spider web in this photo. One of the most beautiful of California natives is Douglas iris. The flowers come in shades of dark and light purple and yellow, and as you can see, they are absolutely gorgeous. These plants are snowberries, Symphoricarpus albus. It's a deciduous plant. The delicate green leaves just appeared a few weeks ago. After blossoming with pink flowers, it fruits with white berries. Here's a photo of the plant with berries. These bright green plants are hummingbird sage, Salvia spathacea. They are about to bloom, and you can see the dark magenta flowers just bursting out on the burgundy calyx. Not surprisingly, given its name, hummingbirds love it. I like the feel of the forest that these 3 coast live oaks give to the edge of my garden. I read that coast live oaks amend the soil over time with their own leaves and build the natural mycorrhizal fungus in the soil that they need to thrive. Many birds, mammals, reptiles, and invertebrates utilize oak trees, and they are host for several butterfly species. This plant is Oregon grape, a California native too. Scientists can't decide whether it's a berberis or a Mahonia aquifolium. It's easy to grow almost anywhere, but it does like shade. Glossy dark green leaves, which are quite prickly like a holly leaf. Clusters of yellow flowers bloom in spring, followed by dusky blue berries. Along the back fence here are a couple of different manzanitas and this beautiful Salvia Allen chickering, which is just starting to bloom. I love the scent of this one. Over here, common rush, Junkins patens, provides a dense thicket of dark green reeds. There is the bold and beautiful sage relative called pitcher sage, Lepicinia hastata. I just cut it down 2 weeks ago to this low 1-foot mound you see here. The leaf stalks grow about 3 feet high, then shoot up 2 to 3 foot flower stalks, lined with magenta rose flowers. I got several blooms last year after deadheading. Hummingbirds love it. Lining this part of the back fence are some Salvia leucophila, some Pacific mist manzanitas, and some coyote bush. The coyote bush, Baccharis pilularis, Twin Peaks, gets about 2 to 3 feet high and as wide as 8 feet. With the manzanita Pacific mist, it has formed a dense thicket along here, which provides great habitat for birds. I frequently see them ducking in and out or perched on the top of the bush or the fence behind it. You can shear coyote bush hard to rejuvenate it. This purple sage had the space to spread into a mound about 5 feet in width. It's not as tall as the Allen chickering, with a lighter colored lavender flower. It's in full bloom right now and just beautiful. Here's another Ceanothus dark star and a photo of it in full bloom a few years ago. This is a mature pink flowering currant, Ribes sanguineum glutinosum. It blossoms in winter with pendant racemes of pink flowers. It's an early source of food for bees and hummingbirds. The flowers are faded now, but here's a photo of it in bloom a few months ago. These are columbines, Aquilegia formosa, small and delicate looking with charming flowers. There are several varieties of California columbines. This one has reddish orange and yellow flowers. This deciduous big leaf maple, Acer macrophyllum, can grow very tall. It has beautiful large leaves and gets interesting and lovely pendant racemes of greenish yellow flowers in the spring. Leaves will turn bright yellow if it's cold enough in the fall before they drop, more brownish yellow in warmer climates. Growing behind the big leaf maple tree and sending gracefully arched branches over the lower branches of the tree is a Pacific ninebark, Physocarpus capitatus. It's a dense deciduous shrub with spring flowers of white with reddish tipped stamens. Here's a photo of it in bloom. The plant arching across the middle of this photo over the coyote bush is a California wild rose, just having leafed out after its winter deciduous period. Here's a photo of a bloom. Along the south fence are 4 beautiful bush anemones, Carpinteria californica Elizabeth, a shrub that gets 4 to 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Here's a photo of it in bloom last year. It blooms from May to July with clusters of brilliant white flowers with yellow stamens. Spice bushes, fragrant flowers and leaves gives this deciduous shrub its common name. Here's a photo of the flowers. That's the end of our tour. I hope you enjoyed this look at some California natives in a Castro Valley garden.
Well, that was terrific, Cindy. Thank you so much. I want to say that if you'd like to see Cindy's plant list, she very nicely put it up there. So once the video goes onto the tour's YouTube page, you could rewatch this video and freeze it on her plant list. Or you could also see her plant list on the Garden Tour's website by looking at the 2021 garden list or the agenda today and link over. So that was great. I noticed that you had, now that we're both Doug Tallamy fans and looking for keystone species, you had many of his keystone species in your yard: the oak, maple, wild rose, manzanita, lilac, sage. You kind of got them all.
I have to say that when I was going through my list, I thought, well, thank you for dimensions, because I didn't know that back in 2009, but I was so happy to find that now.
Yeah. And I love the hedgerow or the thicket that you have along your back fence with sages, coyote brush, manzanita in there, and maybe the lilac.
Really a place that the birds like. It makes them very happy.
So can you tell us about some of your favorite natives? I know you went through a lot of them in detail, but like what really strikes you when you think, what would you recommend that people think about putting in?
If you ask me that question, I often just answer with whatever's in bloom. But over the years, I've come to appreciate a couple of them in particular. I think one is the epilobium, the California fuchsia, because it blooms starting in the late fall, and it's just spectacularly beautiful with its orange-red flowers, and it will spread on its own. It goes where you don't like, you just pull it out, but it often pops up in places that I love to have it. And it lasts forever. I think mine was still blooming, started in late September or October, and was still blooming in February. I think you have to cut it back every year. And I finally cut it back maybe in late February, and it still wasn't looking that bad then. So it's quite spectacular. And maybe just for the sheer beauty of the flower, I love the Douglas iris and I love the lupins. The lupin flower and penstemon flowers and Douglas iris flowers are just unbelievably gorgeous. Can't beat them.
So then with the fuchsia blooming that long for you, you had color in your garden 12 months of the year.
Pretty much. And also, the hummingbirds like them. So I've got something for them to eat when there's nothing else around. So that's a good thing too.
So I know you're in an HOA, and I know also that HOAs can no longer prohibit people from removing their lawns. That wasn't always the case, but now the state passed a law. So if you're in an HOA, you are no longer required to have a lawn. Is there any other, anything else? And you were an early adopter with the native plant garden for your HOA, but how is it now with your HOA and the garden?
I think they are much improved because I've noticed other native gardens popping up, and I don't see people complaining on Nextdoor about the HOA bugging them. I think my HOA still, you don't have to have a lawn, but if you do, they want it to be green, which is why I took out my front lawn entirely and just did the meadow in the back, because my meadow doesn't stay green all year. I don't want to water it that much, and they wouldn't like that. I know they wouldn't. So it took quite a campaign of letter writing to convince them that my native yard back in 2009 was better for my neighborhood. So, but I did eventually.
But anybody now who lives in an HOA, you don't have to feel any compunction about having your lawn, because you cannot be compelled to have a lawn. Well, Cindy, I want to thank you. I know you worked hard on that video and it was lovely. And might you be willing to stay on and answer any further questions that people have in the chats?
I'd be happy to.
Okay, thank you so much. It was nice to see you. Thank you for your time.
Kathy. Thanks for all you do.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, so let's go on now. And so on Mother's Day weekend, Sunwork installed solar panel on Mike's and my house in San Pablo. This is our house in San Pablo. And I have to tell you that they're fabulous. They, meaning both Sunwork and also the panels. Over the last 2 weeks, we have generated far more energy than we have used. Not only are my husband and I producing clean energy, but we're putting our extra energy into the grid. So this is a chart that we just got from PG&E showing that before the panels were put in, we were using energy, but since the panels were put in, we are not. And we're getting now a credit on our electrical bill. And the benefit that we have in the last 12 days, our carbon-free solar production was equal to 550 kilowatts, which is, in trying to think of it in terms of what does it mean to us, it's as though a car had been driven nearly 1,000 miles, but we prevented those emissions. Or that 44 gallons of gas had been consumed and we prevented those emissions. Or that we prevented the emissions from 430 pounds of coal being burned. And for actually just sitting in our offices doing nothing, it's just fabulous to feel that we have had that kind of effect on the environment. I wanted to say, if you've been considering getting solar panels, or if you haven't, I hope that you do, you can lease solar panels at no cost to you and still save between 10% and 30% on your electricity bill. You can buy your solar panels and you'll receive a 26% federal tax rebate on the cost. And also that a study done by Lawrence Berkeley Labs showed that having solar panels on a house increased the value of a home an average of $15,000. So if you might be thinking, well, we're not even going to stay in the house long enough to, get back the value of the installation of the panels, you actually get back a lot of that cost just by having them put on the house at all. So here's our house before it. Actually, this is my garden. I talk about my garden. So we were out of the house for 10 months living in rentals. And when I say that the garden really looks so well after a year of no care at all, this garden hasn't been watered in a year or weeded in a year or deadheaded or pruned or anything. And it's a little wild, but really considering it was abandoned for a year, I was very happy. Anyway, this is the back of our house. And Sunwork is a nonprofit solar installer whose motto is small solar made affordable. And they make solar panels affordable by using trained volunteers to help install the solar panels on homes with low electricity bills, where it may not have been economically practical to install panels. In addition to keeping the labor costs low, Sunwork provides the equipment at cost. There's no markup. And so this is our lead installer, Travis, with a volunteer. If you have a low electricity bill, this is your opportunity to have solar panels installed for up to 30% less than you would pay through a conventional installer. You can contact them at sunwork.org to find out if your home qualifies for their program, or if you're interested in volunteering to help install solar panels. And I'd like to say, we couldn't have been happier with the job that Sunwork did. Everyone from the administrative staff, Travis, our installation lead, and the volunteers were a pleasure to work with. The installation went seamlessly, and our solar panels are working right now, creating the energy that I am using to send this program to you. It's very exciting, and with the 26% federal tax rebate and Sunworks reasonable pricing, the cost is affordable. It's actually been like so massively fun. It's the most fun we have had in a long time, my husband and I, looking at the energy production from our solar panels, thinking about, are there clouds now, and are the panels working, at their full capacity? And it's just fantastic, really.